Jenny. Thanks for stopping by. I'm going to create an anniversary card today, and I'm going to use one of my most favorite and used stamp sets from Avery Elle called Berry Good. And I'm going to use a lot of other things from the Woodland Walk collection from Tonic Studios, including this embellishment mousse and the back of this specialty paper and lots of other things. I had actually planned to use this Avery Elle die that is a happy birthday die that's sort of confetti-like, and I changed my mind and did not use that. And so I'm just showing you all the things that I thought I might use, and then I changed my mind. I thought I might use that heart to highlight the perfect pear sentiment, and you'll see I did not use that. So I do use one of these cards. It's not that, which I thought I might use, the sort of pearlescent color. I do use the plain green cardstock, and that's some other pearlescent and mirror cards. Most of these I do believe are part of the Woodland Walk collection. I could be wrong. I will have everything linked below, and the things that are not part of the collection are also new, but not necessarily part of that trend. So I'm going to get started by stamping out. Well, actually what I do is I go ahead and use, let's see what I do. I go ahead and use the back of this textured specialty paper, and this is one of the things that everyone emphasizes when you have these specialty papers, that if it's not a color that you necessarily like, because it's got this really textured embossed finish on it, you can turn it over, and on the back, which is white, you can color it the color you would like to do. And I haven't done that yet, so that was kind of a neat thing to do, which sort of came about accidentally. But before I do that, I'm going to stamp the pears. Since this is an anniversary card, I'm going to stamp 2 pears, and I'm going to use this VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. And it is waterproof. It's a pigment ink, and it's great. It's a fine detail, and it lasts a long time, and it's perfect for just about any kind of watercolor or mixed media or anything else like that. So while those dry, because they do need to kind of set, I'm going to trim up this piece of specialty paper, and it's sort of a, this was actually from one of the card kits, the craft kits, and I would guess, but I'll probably be wrong. It might be like number 18. It's sort of a nice turquoise color, but like I said, I'm going to use the back, and you'll see here when I highlight it, I'm going to use the Nuvo stencil brushes, and at the time I thought I might use that dye around it, so I kind of wanted to highlight a piece of the middle of it. And I used several different things. I used these stencil brushes that are sort of the brush. I used the thicker stencil brushes that are double-sided, and then I use a very light hand using the brush stencil brush to make it very, very light, which is the one I ended up going with. And what I'm using is the Embellishment mousse from the Woodland Walk collection, and it's called Forest Green, and it's a really pretty spring green kind of real bright color. And those are the 3 you can see, and I'll definitely save those and use those for something else, but I really like the pale color. I'm sort of gravitating towards that more these days. I just wanted a little landing place for the pears, and like I said, at the time I thought this was going in a completely different direction, which, you know, as card makers, that happens a lot of the time, and that's okay. And I thought I might use this. I think it's lime. I can't remember the name of the color. It's like a lime color. It says pearlescent color, but it was too, I didn't like it. I felt like it was too bright and kind of shiny and sparkly for the sort of rustic look of the ink on this specialty paper. So I ended up using this pistachio green cardstock, which is just the classic card that's got a texture weave on it. I ended up die cutting that piece out anyway, which I'm going to save and use for something else. I thought it'd look really cool to use for an anniversary card with some champagne glasses or something sort of like the bubbles and cheers and all that kind of stuff. But I've really been on this kick with this, which is perfect timing for the Woodland Walk collection, because it's one of my favorite colors, and every year it seems to become more and more of one of my favorite colors. This sort of bright spring green, kind of like all the new plants and everything that are coming out that are this sort of super sharp, almost chartreuse color that I think are gorgeous. And so that's been really speaking to me if you look at any of the last cards I've created. And so I'm going to continue on with that. I am using my lint brush here to pull out all those teeny tiny little circles that are part of that die cut, and it's amazing how many of them actually came out with that. And I really aggressively pushed down on it, and it still, it didn't damage the paper, it didn't damage any of the, parts of the die cut in between any of the circles, and it was pretty impressive. So the only key was making sure that I could get the tape off to throw it out without having all the little circles come out again. Anyway, I went ahead and popped those out. I thought I might do like a couple cards kind of using this idea, but as I said, I only ended up doing one, and neither one of them used this die. So I'll save that for another day. Got my Tonic Easy Clean mat there. Okay, I'm trying to decide now which color would look best with that. And that's when I decide that pearly color is, I don't know if, it just looked a little bit too fancy for me for this kind of more sort of rustic colored background. So that's when I decided to pitch that. And at the time I thought I might use that for a stencil, the same kind of card. I couldn't decide what I was going to use it for, but I ended up using it for a background that piece of stenciled specialty paper sits on. In the end, I can get like 2 or 3 cards out of what I do here. I just don't show that on the video. So the other thing about this specialty paper is that it is, because it's a handmade like cotton paper, you really need to have a super sharp cut on it to make sure it's trimmed like with a really smooth line, and so smooth cut. And so the best thing to do is to really make sure that especially with the Tonic guillotine trimmer, which is my favorite, just to make sure that you have your hand pressed on it to hold it down while you push the guillotine down, so that it does cut it really straight and fine, because it's the cottony kind of fibers tend to pull out a bit. Okay, so here's my little pears. I'm going to zoom in now and just do a little quick watercolor on them. I've got a Winsor Newton set here that is one of my favorites. And I'm going to use some of the Tonic brushes and just do a little wash on both of them, using just some yellows and greens. And you'll see I come to a part at the end, sort of end of the video, and I add some of the Nuvo Aqua Shimmer pen on top of it to give it some gloss and some sparkle. And because it's water, obviously it reactivates it, and it actually made this second pair that I use it on really bland, and it actually kind of washed the whole thing out. And I hated that happened. It was okay because it was the one that was going to be in the background, but I think, and I've seen other people do this before, where they actually use the Aqua Shimmer pen, or they use part of it or something to use it as the actual watercolor brush, or maybe they put water into an older Aqua Shimmer pen, and they use that as a water brush to still be able to get some of the sparkle in it without doing what I did. So if I did it over again, I would not do what I did, or I would have used it sort of as a water brush, or maybe with a really, really light hand. I'm going to color the leaves in there with a little bit of the sort of mixed greens and a little bit of brown. And I'm just throwing some color on there and letting it bleed around. I love coloring fruit because it's always different. You know, each piece of fruit looks different from the next piece of fruit, and you know, they're colors from nature, so I think they're always really pretty. All right, so I'm going to dry that really well because I'm going to stamp the sentiment on top of the pear. This is about the time that I decided to abandon the other idea that I had with using that die. And this set from Avery Elle is so great because they're sort of punny sayings, which I love. And it's got something for everything. I mean, it's sort of, you know, this like something that could be used for an anniversary card or a shower or wedding card. It's got something, you know, for somebody that's nice. It's got sort of an uplifting, encouraging card. And honestly, I don't think when I linked below all of my things, I don't think I could find it. I'm sure it's still made. I'm sure it's not, but I couldn't find it, and that makes me sad because it really is, at least for me, it has been such a well-loved and well-used stamp set. All right, so now that I've decided what I'm going to do, I'm going to trim down that piece. That's the lightest sort of embellishment mousse sort of stencil I did on it. And then I'm going to go back and cut with some fun foam. I'm going to cut the pears out again. This has quickly become my absolute favorite way to do any kind of dimensional layering because it's so cheap. I can cut out with the same die cut. It's perfect every time. And I don't have a million dots on it, so when you look at it from the side, you can see like just a continuous line of the dimension. And I really like that. So, and lately I've sort of gone on this little hunt to buy colored foam. So I bought some black squares and I bought some black fun foam, and that's what I'm gonna I think I'm gonna concentrate on a little bit next, so it's not white. Even though most of the images that cut out and they leave a little white border, then obviously the white is great on the edge. But anyway, so I stamped that sentiment on the front of it using that VersaFine Clair ink, and it says the perfect pear. And then I'm going to use this little secondary, I'm going to stamp a little secondary sentiment from also using the Avery Elle sentiment strip that says Happy Anniversary. And I'm going to use the Nuvo Clear Mark ink. I'm going to prep my card base there first. I'm going to use the Nuvo Clear Mark ink and stamp it onto some black cardstock and use the ultra fine white Nuvo embossing powder. All right, I'm going to adhere that little bit there, it's got a teeny tiny little bit of a border there with that green. Now I'm going to adhere my pears onto the fun foam. Liquid adhesive is a must for something like this so that I can smoosh it around and get it to the point where it is, and as you can see there, even though I did dry it just then, I did create a boo-boo where I touched it and it was not quite dry. The VersaFine needs to be completely dry, and I did not wait for that because I'm impatient. So that's the back of that specialty paper and the color it comes in. I'm going to add my, and here's where it all goes wrong. Well, it didn't all go wrong. And I tried just to thin it out, and then it just dries, and it looks, it just looks terrible. it just messed up all of the nice color and water, you know, blending and puddling that I had on the watercolor part. But at any rate, okay, so I'm gonna and that part, and I'm going to pull off that foam tape and adhere that specialty paper to the pistachio green cardstock. I'd actually taken the little leftover pieces that I had sort of tested the see, and then I just made it worse. I had sort of tested the aqua shimmer pen on a little piece of paper, and I just kind of rubbed that over that specialty paper just to give it a little something. Okay, so now I'm going to use a stamp block, which I always like to use for one of these tiny sentiments, especially for heat embossing. If I use a stamp positioner, which I normally use for everything, I would push too hard and it would end up blurring the sentiment, and I wouldn't get a good impression. So it's almost better that the heat embossing almost kind of fills in any of the gaps that you might have. So I just stamp it once. I'm gonna coat it there with my heat embossing tool, and like I said, I've learned my lesson. I'm going to stamp it multiple times, and then I'm going to pour the embossing powder over it, and I'm going to dump that back into the jar, and then I'll heat set it using a my heat tool after it gets hot. I'm going to use my tweezers to hold it there. Doesn't take long once it's really good and hot, and then I'll have those for later. I had never thought I would be into these sentiment strip things because I thought I could cut a straight line, but they are really handy, especially with the sidekick. It just makes my life easier. It makes me feel like my brain doesn't have to work as hard, which at this point is really a good thing. The only thing I have to make sure is that I line it up correctly, which, let me tell you, I can mess that up too. So, at any rate, I have now a couple extra happy anniversary sentiments. So I'm gonna try to figure out how I'm gonna fit this all together. I picked the one I thought was the best. And I'm gonna use my Deluxe adhesive glue on the back of that fun foam. I am trying to squeeze every bit of glue out of that Deluxe adhesive tube. And then I'm going to use a couple foam adhesive squares on part of that so that it gets popped up on the side that that is not overlaying the other pair. Okay. And you'll see I just barely touch it with this, and that's enough. Now I'm going to use my 3D foam squares that I bought in black for this reason. I'm super excited about it. They are from Scrapbook Adhesives, and they come in 2 different sizes. This is the teeny size, and how cute are the little stickers that come off of it, which make it easy to see where they are black and white polka dotted. So now that I've got that set, I am going to finish up the card with some, and I'm going to finish up the card with some Nuvo drops, and I'm going to use a couple different ones that are newer. I'm going to use these, I think this is from the new Woodland Walk. It is the soft mint color. These are the vintage drops in Pioneer Green, and then I'm going to use some of the new stone drops in Chalk White. And then I used one of the Dream Drops in white to cover up my little boo-boo from on the P that I smudged. And that is it. Thanks so much for stopping by. I love hearing everybody's comments and feedback, positive or negative, and I would love to hear if anyone has any tips for avoiding the boo-boo I made using watercolor, a water brush with glimmers shimmer pen or any other sort of ideas you have about that. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. Goodbye.